Hello everyone, welcome to yet another edition of the Rebound series. My name is Farai Mwakutuya. Today's program is brought to you with support from the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development, ZimCOD. Now, in the past few days, Zimbabwe has come into a windfall, receiving about $962 million worth of funds from the IMF. These are special drawing rights that we've heard about. There's been a lot of noise that's been made about it. Today's program will be focusing on what that money should be used for, and what it's being proposed to be used for. We'll also be hearing from members of the public if they actually know that Zimbabwe has received this money and their wish list of how they would like to see it applied. To help me discuss the issue of these funds in the first part of the program, I'm joined by two guests, one in the studio. Shane Makoshori is the Group Business Editor for Alpha Media Holdings. Shane, great to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Farai.
And joining us via Zoom is Chenai Moyo-Mtambasere. We've had her on the program in the past. She is based in the United Kingdom. She's an economic analyst based out there in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us, Chenai Moyo.
Thank you, Farai.
Fantastic. Now, I suppose let's get into this discussion right away. As I always like to say, Shane, is let's not take anything for granted and assume that everyone knows what we're talking about. So, a lot of noise made about these SDR, special drawing rights. Could you tell us what exactly these are and how we've ended up coming into this money that we've received?
Okay, so SDRs, special drawing rights, they are the currency, basically, of the IMF. When the IMF releases money into a country or to anyone, they don't give you US dollars or pounds. They actually release what are called special drawing rights. So you actually have to convert them into a currency that you want to use. So that's what SDRs basically is, the currency of the IMF.
Okay, so essentially we've converted them into US dollars, which is now this 961 million US dollars that we've received.
The SDR is actually quite stronger than the US. So I think it was actually less in terms of numbers when it came out of the IMF.
Indeed.
Then we had to convert.
And something that I think is also important to clarify is that this is not a loan.
So this, I can actually describe it or define it as a sort of a dividend, because it is given to members of the IMF who are the shareholders of the IMF during a certain period. In this case, the SDRs have come out because the IMF wants to reignite or stimulate demand in the world because of the COVID-19 pandemic. After the global financial crisis in 2008, they also released SDRs into the economy just to make sure that they jumpstart economies and ignite demand for companies to start working again.
All right. Chenai, let me bring you into the discussion here. $961 million. A windfall, yes. Some people have argued that it's a drop in the ocean and that we should be making so much noise about it. But clearly it has been very topical here in Zimbabwe. Why do you think that is so?
I mean, it's topical because of the actors involved. You know, everybody is wondering what is going to happen next with these SDRs. There are two things that we need to remember about the SDRs. One is that they are chargeable interest. So they do have an interest fee the moment you use them. So the moment what you've got allocated is less than what what you've got allocated becomes more than what you're holding, then you would incur an interest charge. And this interest is market reliant. So at the moment, maybe it's nothing to talk about because obviously of what's happening with the financial markets. But as we return to normalcy and the US dollar gets stronger, the Chinese, remember, you know, the yen gets stronger and stuff like this, we expect that interest rate can go up. So potentially over a long period of time, if we do use them, there is a cost that Zimbabweans will incur over time. You know, it could go anything to up to about 2% in the not so distant long term. So this is one thing that we need to watch out for. The second is what budget relief does it present to government, and what will that relief be used for? So how are they going to be using it? Do they intend to maintain it as a reserve? In which case we should all go home and relax because it's not being used. But the moment it gets used, it's $1 billion worth of budget relief, we would want to know, given that there's reports of us having a strong external exposure at the moment, we've got a current account surplus, where our reserve balance apparently is strong. So what is going to happen with that budget relief? That's what we want to know. Where is that $1 billion going to go once we start using it to facilitate our fiscal budget?
Indeed. What we've heard so far from the two principals that are involved with this, that is Treasury and the Reserve Bank, both Professor Mthuli and Dr. Johane Mangudya issuing a statement where they have said they will use this money responsibly, carefully, and productively. Shame, from what you've heard so far, what are the intentions in terms of the use of these funds?
So far, on paper, it looks a solid plan. I think these guys had planned well, even before the SDRs were released. One of the things that government is looking at is to make sure that they capacitate and rebuild state hospitals, the bigger ones, to make sure that service delivery in the health sector is improved. They've also talked about looking at building schools, I think one boarding school in each province, where that cannot be done, maybe a high school in each province. They are also looking at making sure that it becomes putting up a revolving facility for companies to tap into through that money, and also to make sure that industries in Zimbabwe, they need about $2 billion to get back to normal. That's what the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries say. So I think part of it will go through to fund production, but it's going to be loans as well, to industries.
Chinaimo, are you happy with those plans that have been laid out so far?
Absolutely not. This fund is to help the global economy survive COVID. That is the #1 most priority. We are to use it to mitigate the impacts of COVID and to eliminate the impacts of COVID. So when the minister or the governor are saying we want to build 8 boarding school, we want to improve our infrastructure, we all know that schools, when you move into a position of lockdown and restricted movement, the children are going to be at home. You're not going to use those schools. So you're not going to get a return on investment, not in the immediate. We've had children that have had 2 years worth of disruption from school. Recently, I saw an advert in a Zimbabwe newspaper for a boarding school that is targeted at the low-income communities, where they were saying we're inviting A-level students, however, you have to be prepared to repeat your lower 6, right? Because that's the reality. Whilst we're in Harare, we're looking at an elite group where the schools have been able to facilitate, some digital learning, online learning. And for the majority of the country, for the majority of the children, this has not been the case. They have literally lost nearly 2 years worth of education. So these are the things that we need to be mitigating against. We need to be looking at how can we minimize the impact of the damage that has been done already and the damage that is potentially to come. If you look at Zimbabwe, we're doing the vaccination program, which is good. But I think when I last checked, we're about 28 to 30% of the adult population have actually been double vaxxed. You look at South Africa, and as of the 3rd of September, it was only 10% of the population that has been double vaxxed. This means we do not have herd immunity. There is a high probability that we are going to go through a 4th and maybe even a 5th COVID wave. Therefore, any additional reserve, any additional resources is not business as usual spending. It's looking at how do we sustain the economic impact of the COVID-19 on Zimbabweans. That's what the focus should be.
Indeed, Chennai, you're talking about a return on investment. You're talking about the need to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. So should we not therefore be putting this money into projects or applying it where it will give us a return? So for instance, as Shame has just said, there'll be revolving funds for companies that want to borrow for those productive sectors, which is also something that has been laid out. Surely that will ensure that this money will earn us more money in the future.
Yes, so again, my point, Farai, is that we are not in business as usual terms, right? Companies cannot be at their maximum utilization when we're in lockdown, when people are affected by COVID, when things are basically shut down. It's not going to happen. We will not realize a return on that investment in that time. We've also got to focus on the majority sector when you look at our economy, right? The majority sector for me is the informal, the people that have to go into town to sell, the people that have got these informal mechanisms that simply can't work when we're in a COVID situation. How can we capacitate the informal sector? We've seen recently, the moment we've eased off the lockdown, the parallel market exchange rate goes up to, I don't know, 135. I've heard somebody on Friday say 140, 160 in certain areas, right? This is indicative of what is happening with the informal sector. We've all seen the pictures of people stranded at is it 4th Street, where they're trying to get a bus home. That is the informal sector. Those people are not going in to work in companies. They're going in to buy and sell and try and earn an income. And as we return to normalcy, there's going to be a huge impact in terms of people cannot afford. Prices have already started to go up, and they will continue to do so. So how can we capacitate those that are participating in the informal sector? Those are my prime concerns. I'm not so much concerned about companies, because as a commercial entity, you should have a reserve. You should have some sort of prudence in your budget to facilitate for things like COVID, right? Let's look at who is the most impacted. And the informal sector is facilitating 60% of adults in Zimbabwe their income, they rely on the informal sector. Let's look at how we can capacitate that sector. If we are to try and look at productivity, when we look at things like the 49% and the 49% extreme poverty figure, that was in June, based on the second wave. It was before we'd gone through the third wave. So I'm expecting that to have increased since we've had the third wave. Let's look at how do we minimize poverty in Zimbabwe.
Indeed. Let me stop you there because we need to take a short break now. We'll come back and continue this discussion. This is the Rebound series today, discussing the special drawing rights and this money that Zimbabwe has come into, how it should be utilized. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. It is the Rebound series. We continue our discussion here. Shema Koshori is the group business editor for Alpha Media Holdings. He is in the studio. We've heard, Chinaimo is speaking very passionately about the need to mitigate COVID impact, the vulnerable, the hard hit areas and people in our communities. Let me ask you this. I know at the onset of the pandemic, government did announce that a special fund had been set up for business, for people in the informal sector, for the vulnerable. Now, has that been utilized? In terms of your coverage, do you know if anyone has been able to access that money and what impact it's had?
I'm one of the people who have followed that package very religiously from the start. It was actually announced on 1 May 2020. It was about $18 billion. At that time, I calculated, I think it was about 12 million? Somewhere around there, US dollars, but it was 18 billion in Zimbabwe dollars. The tourism sector was going to be given $500 million. And I tell you, 2 months ago, we talked to the new president of the Tourism Business Council. That person was saying we haven't seen even a cent coming out of that package. We've talked to CZI, to Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, talking about this package. They tell you that we haven't received anything out of the package. But if you talk to the government now, they'll tell you that we've actually released money. But the way it has been released in their words is through facilitating companies to go and borrow in the financial services sector. But I'll tell you that our financial services sector at the moment, they are very skeptical about giving loans to these industries, not only because of the pandemic, but just generally before the pandemic kicked in. From 2019, you know, we'd gone back, relapsed back to a financial crisis. We talk of inflation was rising, exchange rate fragilities, and so forth. So those are the factors that make the financial services sector very skeptical to give loans to companies at the moment.
That point you raise is actually very interesting, and I wanted to take you up. I mean, you've spoken about the things that government plans to do
Yes,
with the money. Mm-hmm. We've often been told that we have a surplus. So if government had a surplus fund anyway, why weren't they building those schools? Why weren't they capacitating those hospitals as they are doing now with this money they've received?
So you see that the surplus that we talk about, it's not US dollars. It's Zimbabwe dollars. If you convert it to US dollars, I will tell you, the economists to confirm, it's not a lot of money. Mm-hmm. It would not do anything in terms of the mega projects or the interventions that the social services sector needs. The poor people over, as she says, over 49% in extreme poverty. Even if you channel that man only to the poor, it's not going to make an impact. Mm-hmm. So we actually needed an injection like what has come in, an external injection of 1 billion to make sure that those things can actually happen. And the type of loans that our industries need at the moment, there are interventions that come from the state that are actually low interest, concessional interest, so that they can actually go back. Because our banks are not going to give loans just willy-nilly.
Indeed. Yeah. Chinemo, I want to come back to you. One of the things that the officials have said they want to do, you mentioned the exchange rate, the parallel market exchange rate, going up to the rates that you quoted there. There's some who've said perhaps this money should be put into supporting the currency, so into the auction, so that it starts to stabilize it even further, so that parallel market rate doesn't keep climbing as it is now. Do you think that is a valuable argument?
No. To give a quick response, because already we know that the interchange auction, I mean, we have spoken about this before now, Farai, in the sense that I don't really understand what the end game by the Reserve, by the central bank is with that. Why they are forcing us, by us, I mean the taxpayers, the Zimbabwean citizenry, to fork out US dollars at a rate that is a pegged rate. It is not reflective of the market, right? So we're subsidizing 28% of the market. So the 28% of commercial activity that is going through the interchange auction rate is being subsidized by you and I. It's being subsidized by the citizens because they are managing to purchase the US dollars at a rate that is much, much less, at a discounted rate to what the market dictates. And the only time that you would do that is where you were moving towards, so you'd go into a pegged regime because you were moving towards either dollarization or de-dollarization. There's got to be a finite period. I understand that the origins of the interchange auction market was to allow for price discovery. It was meant to be a market-led situation, but instead we've gone in and we've pegged it at 85. And there's no reason why, there's no benefit to the Zimbabwean people why we're doing that, especially because is the top end, is the 28% of companies that are probably doing quite well anyway that have access to this. And this is allowing for a lot of arbitrage dealing, a lot of rent-seeking opportunities. And we have said this time and time again, and it's a major concern that this money that essentially we are borrowing is different to the Poverty Reduction Fund. Poverty Reduction Fund is capped from the IMF, but this is not capped, it's market-led. So we're getting these SDRs, and the worst thing that we can do is to put them through the interchange auction, because we're not getting the best deal for them, right? If you consider that in a year's time, you could be paying 2% interest rate on these things, once you convert them to usable currency, we are not getting the best deal for them. Shane mentioned about the external exposure. So if we go strictly according to the monetary policy statement that's been issued, They're estimating about 611 million external exposure. This is US dollars on the balance of payments, because they're saying that our exports, and we know exports may exceed imports at the moment because of the lockdown, because of the downward consumption pressures. But that's the position we're in. They talk about that they've maintained a conservative reserve. Like you were saying, rightly so. If we've got this money, why have we not been helping the poor people? Why have we just been keeping it? But that has been the stance of the central bank from the start. They said they were going to go in and they were going to maintain a conservative approach. And we did challenge them to say we need to be accommodative because of the pandemic. But because of that, they are reporting a surplus. And if you convert it at the interchange auction, that's about 340 US dollars, I think 340 million US dollars that they're saying we've got in our reserves. So put together, that almost equates what we have in terms of the SDRs. So would like to see us slowly using the SDRs to relieve budget pressure. In the first instance, as reserves, let's use what we have so that we maintain a prudent approach, so that when we go into another COVID, perhaps we need to increase our imports exposure. Let's maintain them as reserves initially. And then let's look at things like vaccines. Let's have as many, and by vaccines, I don't mean just buy the vaccines, but let's do an education piece as well. Because that we know from even from Europe, from here in the UK where I am, that education of why people need to get vaccinated, and even to some extent convincing them that they should get vaccinated, is an important part of their vaccination program. Let's look at digitalization of schools so that every child has got access to online. Because I almost see these 8 boarding schools, which the minister is talking about constructing. It's creating yet another sub-elite group. So it's the children maybe that will go to boarding school that will have access. How many children can you put into 8 boarding schools when you look at our rural population, right? Does it work for the rural communities to put children in boarding schools? What is the downstream impact in terms of social labor, etc.? So, we need to really think clearly in terms of, okay, if we're going to use this money, let's put it where we're mitigating the COVID impact. Let's make the country more resilient, because it is probable that we are going to see another COVID wave. So you might have the best roads, but if nobody can drive on them because they're in the hard lockdown, you're not going to get a return on investment, not at least for another year or 2 years on them.
Okay, let me come back to you, Shame. Obviously, you have an opportunity and a privilege to rub shoulders with a lot of people in industry, in business. What is their take on how this money should be used?
So, basically, they're in business and they need money. I was talking to you about the $2 billion that has always been talked about in the past 3-4 years, that the manufacturing sector requires to make sure that they go back to 2019 levels. Mm-hmm. So they will tell you that we need more funding, cheaper funding, mm-hmm. to move into the market. And I get worried, Farai, because I would expect leaders like people in industries to be able to talk also about the concern of the people who cannot afford. Yeah. So I'm not hearing that, but I'm hearing more of funding into industries, mm-hmm. Which is a word.
Mm-hmm. Social services, as you're saying, social services. Yeah. There's a huge disparity. We've fallen behind.
I think they are receiving about should be $3 per month. The people who are getting money from government, those handouts. Uh-huh. So it should be about $3, if I'm not mistaken, per month. And it's not everyone. Just a tiny number of people are getting that money. Mm-hmm. So I would expect funding like this to be injected into the people who cannot afford, to make sure that those who are not going to school at the moment, because you find that already people who are in peri-urban areas, people who are actually in Harare, but in low-income areas, they are already at a disadvantage in terms of going to school. They have not been doing these lessons that are being talked about. And examinations are coming. I've never heard of a date that has been changed in terms of extending to accommodate the time that has been lost. Mm-hmm. But I tell you, the elite, as Johane says, they are actually prepared for these exams. Indeed. So would expect this money to make sure that it's inclusive it goes where it must be channeled to.
Talking about where this money going, where it must be channeled to, it's a question I'd like to put to both of you, but beginning with you here, Shem, is, and I ask this because you're in the media space. We've seen the statement from the finance minister, the governor of the Reserve Bank, saying we're going to use this money, to quote them, responsibly, carefully, and productively. Accountability. Because, you know, in circles, in informal circles where I've spoken to people, people have suggested that, you know what, half of this money has already been taken, it's going into people's pockets, it's going to, you know, be abused and things like that. This is a test of how we can be transparent in terms of utilizing these funds.
So far, the noise that we're making at the moment in the media and other space, it's not about the value of the money. It is about how government is going to be able to use this money, about government's ability to demonstrate that they can manage funds, bigger packages of funds transparently. But my worry, as you say, is given the levels of corruption that we've been seeing in Zimbabwe, this money is going to be used, you know, it's going to be very formal, people getting tenders to do certain things, but who gets the tenders will matter. But when you try to track behind to see whether it has not been used well or not, you find that everything's above board. But it depends on the people who are going to be getting tenders to do the services or the project that we're talking about.
Indeed.
That is where the problem is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shem, I must stop you there. We need to take a short break. Interesting you talk about, you know, those issues of tenders, grant corruption, state capture. That is the focus of another discussion and a program that we will have on the Rebound series in the coming weeks. So we look forward to that and analyzing the challenges that we are facing in that regard. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we continue this discussion. It'll be our final segment. Stay tuned. This is the Rebound series. Welcome back. This is the Rebound series. I have two guests on this show. One in the studio, Shane Makoshwari, Group Business Editor, Alpha Media Holdings, and Chinai Moyo Mutambasere. She's a UK-based economic analyst. Chinai Moyo, I want to ask you this. Before we went to the break, we obviously spoke about the issues of transparency, accountability around this money. Shane suggesting that this is a litmus test in terms of these authorities proving that they can actually use this money in the right way, in the proper way. Do you think they're up to that test?
So it's an interesting question, because when we look at directly how they're going to use the SDRs, there's clearly a commitment of transparency to the IMF, transparency to the people of Zimbabwe. So it may be that it may be that they do demonstrate that they're using this, and but without almost taking into account the downstream activity like the tenders, etc. But literally, this is how they've apportioned the money. We should be able probably to see that and trace that. The issue for me becomes the relief in the budget, right? Because clearly we must have, say, for example, one of the things the minister said that they were going to do were vaccines and all this. We clearly had prepared to buy more vaccines. We have a budget. We have money in the bank. We have a surplus in our current account. So if the government is being given $1 billion worth of budget pressure, it's important for us to actually increase the transparency on every other line item. So the rest of the revenue, the rest of our surplus, let's see how that is being used as well. Because what we don't want to do is to give them a situation where you've handed them basically $1 billion and you release $1 billion from the budget. What is going to happen with that money? That relief that's coming from the budget, we now need to step up the transparency on everything in the budget because of this 1 billion through SDRs. Because essentially, if you had $20 in your pocket, Farai, to go to town, and I say, right, here's $20, and you say to me, Chanira, I'm going to use this $20 to go to town instead. it means you now have $20 extra in your pocket. We want to know how you're going to use that $20 extra that you've got left as well, because there's a lot of things that can then happen next. So it now means we need a transparency on the whole, not just on the 1 billion of the SDRs. We need a transparency on the whole. And then we also must check, and this idea of the interchange auction, it will be a sorting shame if we end up putting this money through that auction, because it's a loss to the Zimbabwean people. If I, as a citizen, if I need US dollars, I have to go and change at 140, 150. But at the same time, I'm subsidizing a company that is already raking in millions to do the same at 85. So that the citizenry has got to really speak up and loudly to put an end to this, because that is where the majority of the leakage happens, even before we start to spend the SDRs, that we are subsidizing, 28% of the economy, and that just needs to stop.
Very good point. As we head towards wrapping up, I think a critical question, because this is something that has been reported very widely, talked about very widely, the ordinary Zimbabwean out there. I mean, obviously business interests, as you say, they want to get cheap money and productive money, talk of schools and all that. Should there be this expectation among Zimbabweans that, I want to feel the difference of this billion that has come in, and how best can we achieve it? Is it through the building of schools or building of hospitals? So that every ordinary Zimbabwean can say, billion yakati yakavaka chikoro ichi, billion yaka, it did this for us. Is that too much? Is that too much of a pipe dream to wish for Zimbabweans to point and say that there is our 1 billion SDRs? That's what it did. How best can we achieve that where Zimbabweans feel that they've actually benefited from this? I'll begin with you, Shem.
So, Farai, I think we should be able to build things that are able to say in the future, this is what we did with that man. I'll tell you, if you go to Matiberiland at the moment, there are widespread shortages of water there. Mm-hmm. They are always crying out about the shortages of water. Bulawayo is supposed to be our industrial hub. That's how this country was built. But there's been a flight of companies from Bulawayo, mostly back to Harare, because there's no water. So I would like to see infrastructure that demonstrates that the SDR is benefited Bulawayo, and Bulawayo is returned back to its status as an industrial hub. So as other areas, we talk of Gweru, Kwekwe, and so forth. So we should be able to build infrastructure in terms of the economy that can demonstrate that now at least something has happened and companies are taking back. I always talk in terms of companies because that's my life. Yeah. So I think that's what I want to see. But in Bulawayo, I think I'm very concerned that we should have seen a lot of money being channeled from this package, making sure that the water situation is sorted out.
Indeed. Very good point you make there. I mean, I recall as far back as when I was in primary school, talk of the Matebeleland Zambezi water project. Now, since I was in primary school, and that's a long time ago, yeah.
That project is only 600 million. Mm-hmm. And we have
961
So if we channel that money, we still have 300 million to spend.
And be able to tick off something that's been on the cards for decades.
If you ask me, I would go for the Matebeleland Zambezi water project. Make sure that is done, and it helps an entire region in terms of irrigation and so forth, and also the whole country in terms of reindustrializing the country. The economy.
Chinai Moyo, over to you. How can we make sure that or is it too much to wish for that every Zimbabwean feels that this is the impact of this money?
Well, I think it's not too much to wish for at all. So I'll give an example. Here, where I am in the UK, we're now looking at returning to normalcy. And I'm telling you, it's like you wake up in the morning and think, maybe this is finally over in terms of the COVID. It's important for Zimbabwe to get to that stage. And we quite frankly are not there yet. We've got this bubble, and we saw that last year. Around this time last year, we were kind of relaxed about COVID. It wasn't as bad. We got to December with the travelers across the border coming back, etc. January, we were at our peak. So assuming that might happen again, we really need to be able to say we are now resilient in terms of COVID. our children will no longer be impacted. Let's digitalize education. We've got our good friends, you know, in the East who could easily help us to digitalize Zimbabwe's education. Let's look at things like improving hospitals. I mean, at the peak of the pandemic, if you look at, say, between January and March, it was a mess. It was a disaster. You know, if you got COVID in Rusape, you were, and somewhere along that region, you were done for. There were no hospitals that you could go into unless you got an ambulance and traveled to Harare. Let's capacitate our rural district hospitals. And I'm not saying let's use all the money again, because we still need to remain prudent because of where we are. We are not in a business as usual situation. So what can we do to capacitate rural district and community hospitals so that they can cope with things like COVID, so that they can cope with other non-communicable diseases that make the impact of COVID worse? And those sort of things do not break the bank. You know, because what we don't want to do, we don't want to be foolish enough to go and spend all the money when you haven't come through the pandemic yet, because that would be a disaster.
Indeed. Chinai, I must stop you there because we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us online via Zoom and for sharing your insights and your very impassioned inputs with regards to mitigating the impact of COVID-19 and making sure that no one is left behind. Thank you so much for that. Also, Shema Koshori, my other guest who was here in the studio, great to hear what you had to say and for your experiences. And we hope that, you know, as you keep track of the initial 18 billion as well as this, we see transparency and the impact of that. And that does it for the studio part of this interview. We're now going to hear some views from the streets, from the ordinary people in Zimbabwe, to find out if they know indeed about these SDRs and how they would want them utilized.
Let's put it into context, right? Zimbabwe if we take infrastructure, for example, Zimbabwe needs about $14 billion in order to get in the infrastructure right. It needs about $10 billion to put into agriculture. It needs about another $10 billion to put into the energy. You see what I'm saying? So let's put it into context. The $1 billion is nothing when we come to the needs of the country, right? Although obviously it's a nice windfall. The key issues which have been identified currently are, number one, the issue of social services, the issue of industry and infrastructure, agriculture and mining. But we've had these things. I mean, you will remember, for example, that the Zimbabwe launched an 18 billion industrial fund for industry during COVID, and businesses complaining that, listen, we've not had access to it. So, you know, although we have these intentions, what is key? How do we implement? How do we ensure, for example, that the business sector, particularly small business, benefit from this? How do we ensure we sort out the health sector so that at least clinics, particularly local clinics, have got the medicine? Because that is where the community has contact with the government, particularly at council clinics. How do we ensure that they're fully equipped? The issue in education, how do we make sure, for example, that each school has got access to cheaper broadband? Those are the priorities, but I don't think $1 billion is enough to make a significant dent, particularly given the needs that I've just spoken to you about.
So what do we do? Do we just use it and see how far it goes? Or?
Well, we say, listen, what are the triggers of the economic recovery? We know agriculture is. How do we put some of that into agriculture so that we can begin to diversify away from maize and tobacco? How do we put into exports, particularly export-oriented industry, so that that industry can actually generate more foreign exchange? Because what you don't want to do, you don't want to plow this money and then it sinks into a sinking hole and you are not able to generate future income on it. But again, let's be very clear on the context. It's very little money.
Yeah, I think government vakadzidza vakaemployiwa vakapia mabasa ekunge vachinyatsongoona kuti mari yashande. Asi chatinokumbira ndechekuti zvinhu zvokuita zvakawandisa zviripo. Dambudziko ratinaro nderekuti vanhu vari kuzopiwa maoko mawo ndo vasiri kuishandisa zvakanaka, because tine mari dzakawanda sofa dzatapiwa munyika munomu dzisiri kushanda maringe nezvadzinenge dzichifana kudi kushanda. Mari inouya toti right toda kugadzira marodzi, munhu achapiwa mari achida kugadzira marodzi achatora mari oisenda kukambani yake irida kuzoti igadzire marodzi zvine uori mukati. Zvinhu zviri kuitika zvese zvo vanhu vari kuzviona. Saka chatiri kungokumbira ndechekuti ko vanhu vacho ngavasungwe handiti wapinde mujeri, then kuti munhu achauya next achida kushandisa mari dzegovernment anenge achitya kuba. Vanhu vari kusungwa havasi kuenda kujeri. Saka kana neniwo ndakangonzi wopinda apa ndinongosvika ndichide sezvangu ndichiba nekuti ndinoziva kuti by the end hapana kwandinoenda. Mari zvekushandisa vanhu vane nzara, vanhu vari mucovid, vari mumalockdown havana chikafu. Tine marodzi kungadzira marodzi ngoti vanhu vafambe zvakanaka chete chinhu chihombe stereki. Tine infrastructure yedu, tine mabuilding atinotarisira kuti mabuildings anofanira kunge achiratidzika senyika. Zvinhu zvose izvozvo zvinoda mari. Tine vana vechikoro chaivo vari kungodzorwa. Tine maticha asina mari. Tine zvinhu zvakawanda zviri kuda mari. But the only problem ndeyekuti panotorwa mari ichinzi yakuendeswa kuministry iri kufanira kunge ichiita nezvoizvozvo, mari iyeyo iri kuzodamurwa. Maybe inoshanda it's less than a quarter yemari inenge yaiswa ikoko. Saka izvozvo ndo zvatiri kukumbira kuti vanhu iko ivavo sei vasiri kusungwa, kana vachisungwa sei vasiri kuenda kumajeri. Saka isi tiri kuti pasine corruption, tiri kudawo kuti mari ishande maringe nezvainenge yatumwa zvinonzwisika nevana veZimbabwe.
I think this money should be injected in the economy to make the economy better. Things should be functioning, like our banks. People are supposed to be, especially the youth, they're supposed to be able to get loans from the banks, right, to fund their projects. This money should be used also for development. We have poor roads. We have basically our infrastructure. It's not even compared to other African countries like South Africa. So that money should be used also to develop our infrastructure, our roads, also our health systems. The money should also be used kutenga mishonga, right? More hospitals. Let's have our health system gai function. Let's have vanhu vachibatsirana kuzvipatara, ngatitengei mishonga inorapa zvirwere like mavasins zvinobvisa na covid, mishonga inobatsira vanhu even vari affected nechirwere cheshura matongo. Let's save that money ichibatsira vanhu vanongorwara nezvinhu zvakasiyana siyana.
Money received from IMF, no. I think they should help girls, let's say in the rurals, that can't afford to get basic necessities, e.g. sanitary wear.
I think first of all what needs to be done is we are a country that is still trying to rebuild. We are a country that is still trying to come from wherever we have been economically and moving into another direction or another sphere that will probably generate employment to reduce whatever unemployment that has been happening currently. So I think with this money, what should happen is the government should utilize it in funding SMEs, mostly the small businesses that are trying to grow or that are trying to start up. And then in terms of transparency, we need to encourage accountability in our institutions, especially those that will be involved in distribution of these funds. Perhaps in trying to gazette how the funds are being utilized or how they are being distributed in terms of utilization and distribution towards exhaustion of that facility, so that everyone is clear that these funds are being used for this project, these funds are being used for such a thing. I think that is what should happen.
Well, that does it for this edition of the Rebound series. My name is Farai Mwakutuya. Thank you so much for tuning in and for choosing us. This program has been brought to you with the proud support of the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development, ZimCod. We'll be back again to do this again next time, so be sure to join us then. Until then, do stay safe during these very treacherous and dangerous times. Bye-bye.